Chinese manufacturers are rocking right now, and they're making the autofocus lenses, which are affordable and not that bad. Today we're having a look at the Meike 85mm f1.4, a beast of a lens. Let's go. What's good, guys? My name is Oleg Nikitin and you're watching No Limits On channel. So this is the Meike 85 f1.4 and I have compared it to my Yongnuo 85 f1.8, which is 2 times smaller and lighter, but we'll compare the image qualities, the bokeh quality, etc. But as for now, let's have a look at the Meike 85 f1.4, and last year I was filming a video comparison of the Meike 85 f1.8 versus Zeiss Body's lens, and it's got a lot of views, to be honest, guys. But this Meike lens is a ton better than the 85 f1.8 by Meike autofocus lens as well. And here is a comparison between those two Meike lenses. I didn't have the opportunity to compare them myself, but my colleague, a very nice YouTuber, did it for me, so go ahead and check his channel in the description below as well. And to be honest, guys, this lens is really not that bad optically. It's actually really good, and I took a lot of photos with my Sony ZV-E1, 12 megapixels, electronic shutter, f1.4 at all the photos, and no extra editing of the photos whatsoever. They're all JPEGs straight out of camera, and you can tell, guys, that the image quality is nice. The bokeh rendering, the depth, the sharpness is very good. So let's have a look at the lens itself. It comes with a lens hood. It's a pretty plastic lens hood. Let's remove this one. It also comes with the front and back caps, of course. On the body of the lens itself, we can see the aperture dial, so you can change the aperture with those clicks, or you can set it to auto and change it with your camera. I set it to auto most of the time. We have a focusing ring, we have autofocus manual focus switch, as well as a focus hold button. It can be customized to whatever you need. 77mm filter thread. And on the back of the lens, we have the weather sealing gasket, as well as the USB Type-C port for firmware updates, which is always nice. And all in all, this lens is pretty heavy. It's 720 grams compared to this one, which is almost 2 times lighter and smaller. But this Meike lens is 100 grams less than the G Master 85 f1.4 from Sony. And it's approximately the same size. I took it with me with my Sony ZV-E1 without a cage, and I had 0 issues with handling this lens, so I'm not afraid of the size and weight of this lens. So now let's have a closer look at its performance. So now let's have a look at the vignette and distortion. The distortion is barrel distortion, but it's very, very slight, and we have like a mustache shape, and when we stop down, we do get rid of the vignette pretty quickly. The vignette is very soft and gentle, and as you can tell, guys, at f1.4 it's not too much darker in the corners than at f1.8 or f2.8 or at f4. And the sharpness in the corner is also pretty great, as you can tell, guys, so you don't need to stop down a ton to get sharp corners. What really surprised me is the chromatic aberration. I don't see any major issues with chromatic aberration, even at f1.4. There is almost 0 longitudinal chromatic aberrations or any other kinds of chromatic aberrations. Great job, Meike. So focus breathing is, of course, a weak point of this lens, but all 85mm lenses, they struggle with the focus breathing a ton, and the manual focusing is really nice on this lens. It's almost linear, and I can precisely focus with this lens manually. And the second weak point of this lens is the minimum focusing distance. It's 98 centimeters, and this is as close as I can get to my iPhone. So it's not the best performance in this regard, but in real world conditions, I didn't have major issues with it, taking portraits or filming like flowers or something like this. But most of the 85mm lenses, they have like 90 centimeters or 80 centimeters minimum focusing distance. So here's the real world example, the leaves, my cat, and at 400% scale, you can see that it's like tech sharp, super nicely focused, right on the eye with the animal autofocus on the ZV-E1. And if it was like a 48 megapixel image, it would be much better, but it's only a 12 megapixel camera, of course. The flowers. So in the real world, I don't struggle with the minimum focus distance a ton. In terms of the flares, when you film at f1.4, you do get pretty rainbowy flare and a lot of artifacts. As you can see, the contrast drops a little bit as well, but when you stop down to f1.8, so just a couple of clicks, you get much better contrast, almost no artifacts whatsoever. So if you need a cleaner image, you can stop down to f1.8 and get a very nice image. But if you do need those artifacts as a creative choice, you can use f1.4 and get those rainbowy flares as well. And now guys, the autofocus test. Here I'm using the touch to focus and my AF speed is set to 5 out of 7, and at 5 it performs the best in my opinion. We don't have any double checking of the focus by the lens. It doesn't breathe a lot and it doesn't jump all over the place. So the speed 5 and the sensitivity 5, we get really nice and usable results, and it's precise. It finds my eye, it switches to the background, no issues whatsoever. And in photo mode, it's also a very nicely working autofocus system. But when I set my camera to the maximum speed, the speed of 7 and the sensitivity of 5, it does get a bit jerky. So you can see that the lens just breathes a little bit, double checks if it's in focus, it jumps from background to the foreground and does it like a couple of times to make sure it's in focus. So for this particular combination, I do suggest using the speed of 5 in the settings of the autofocus and the sensitivity depending on your needs. In this case, the 5 was the setting that I chose, but if you need this lens to stay locked onto your subject, you can leave it at like 1 or 2. And here is the example of the photo autofocus. The guy was riding, just passing me by, and the eye autofocus got it spot on, just nailed it. Of course, the 12 megapixel is not the best resolution, but here are the guys walking around the park as well, and you can see the depth of field, the bokeh of this lens, and the autofocus was spot on almost all the time. So now let's compare this lens to the Yongnuo 85 f1.8. Of course, the size difference is enormous, but now let's have a closer look at the bokeh and the sharpness of those two lenses. So here you can see the Meike 85 f1.4 at about 3 to 4 meters away from me. So you can see the bokeh quality, it's very nice, it's super round, the texture of the bokeh is nice, no outer membrane, no busyness whatsoever, and the sharpness is really nice as well. Now let's have a look at the Yongnuo lens. It's considered to be the sharpest lens ever by DxOMark. For some reason, it is sharp, by the way, but as you can tell, this sharpness difference is not crazy, and the bokeh is a bit more busy. We have less bokeh, less background blur because of f1.8 versus f1.4, and we have a 12-bladed aperture on the Meike versus 7-bladed aperture on the Yongnuo lens, and you can see that the Yongnuo does have a busier background, especially on a bit wider shots. It's less of a blurred background and it's busier. And here are the bokeh balls side by side in the forest. You can see how the bokeh quality differs. I do prefer the Meike in this case, but Yongnuo also does a very good job considering that it only has 7-bladed aperture. And here is my regular evening or night test, and you can tell that the bokehs do have a little bit of a cat-size shape towards the edges of the frame, but other than that we have very round, very smooth, no inner structure, no outer membrane, as I said, and the 12-bladed aperture gives us very round circles throughout the entire range of apertures, as you can tell right here, whereas the Yongnuo does have pretty significant corners in its aperture. So for the bokeh quality and for the bokeh balls, I do give a huge thumbs up for Meike engineers. Here is a little shot of me on the balcony on the minimum focus and distance. So here's the difference between f1.4 and f1.8. It's not a huge difference, it's about 66% more light on the f1.4 lenses. And here guys, on the waveform you can see the difference, that it's not huge, but it's always nice to have about 60% more light, of course guys. So here we have the chroma smearing effect. The chroma smearing at f1.8 on both lenses is very nice, and if you stop down to about f16 or f8, you get pretty nice sun stars, and the Meike wins in this situation as well. I do enjoy those sun stars a ton. And guys, do not forget that this Meike lens is the cheapest autofocus 85mm f1.4 lens for Sony E-mount, Nikon Z. We do have pretty expensive G-Master lens, we have a couple of other lenses, but other than that, there is not a whole huge variety of f1.4 autofocus lenses, especially for Sony E-mount. So I do recommend you buying this lens if you don't have any 85mm autofocus lens in your kit. I do have the Yongnuo and I'll be keeping this one, but if I didn't have one, I'd be more than happy with the Meike lens. It only has 3 major drawbacks, at least to me: the size and weight. It's not like extremely weighty and not extremely huge, but I don't think that most of the people will be super satisfied with the bulk of this lens. It's a bit on the bulkier side. The main drawback is the minimum focus and distance. If you do like full face portraits, it's fine. Full height portraits, it's fine. But if you want to film like macro, you do need like macro extensions or the diopters. And the third is for videographers is the focus breathing. It breathes a lot, so you need to be careful while filming with this lens. Other than that, for photographers, for videographers who don't film a ton of action, it's a great lens, and the autofocus performance is nuts. It's super good at 5 speed and 5 sensitivity. It's also really sharp, and I did enjoy using this lens a ton. Can highly recommend it as well. So if you did enjoy this video, please smash the like and subscribe buttons and hit the notifications bell. And right here, I'll be leaving you a video of this Yongnuo lens versus the 5x camera of my iPhone 15 Pro Max for you to watch next, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.